The skies above the planet Zithera were unlike anything Kale had ever seen. Vast shades of violet stretched across the horizon, broken only by floating land masses that seemed to drift effortlessly in the thin air. The air shimmered faintly with a golden dust that reflected the twin suns, casting a strange glow over the city of crystal towers where the alien king ruled. Kale had traveled across galaxies, seen planets both beautiful and deadly, but nothing could prepare him for what awaited inside the palace. He had been summoned by word of a king, an alien king, who sought his aid. The message had been simple, almost unbelievable. Bring courage and wisdom, for I entrust you with my daughter. Kale had read the message several times, uncertain if it was some elaborate test or a genuine plea, and now, standing at the gates of the palace, he realized there was no turning back. The gates opened silently, moving as if alive, revealing a hallway lined with glowing panels that pulsed with energy. Kale walked carefully, his boots clicking softly on the smooth floor. Servants, tall, elegant creatures with shimmering skin, stood at attention, watching his every move with cautious curiosity. Despite his experience as a warrior and traveler, Kale felt the weight of the silence pressing down on him. Finally, he reached the throne room. The alien king sat upon a high dais, his presence commanding and yet not without warmth. He was tall, far taller than any human, with skin that gleamed like polished bronze and eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. Beside him, in a delicate chair, sat the reason Kale had been summoned, a small alien girl, her form fragile, almost ethereal. Kale, the king said, his voice deep and resonant. I have heard of your courage and the way humans survive where others would fail. My daughter Leora is weak. She cannot endure the trials that await her people. I need someone to guide her, to protect her, and perhaps to awaken what I fear may never grow inside her. Kyle studied the girl. Leora looked up at him with large, luminous eyes wide with fear and curiosity. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, and her skin had the soft glow of moonlight. She seemed fragile, as if a strong gust of wind could shatter her. Kale felt a pang of concern. How could someone like this survive in a universe that had no mercy? I will do my best, Your Majesty, Kyle replied, bowing respectfully. But if she is truly as fragile as you say, it will not be easy. The king's gaze softened. I do not ask for ease, Kale. I ask for effort. She must learn strength and she must learn courage. If not for herself, then for the world she will inherit. I entrust her to you, not as a gift, but as a responsibility. Guard her, teach her, and help her grow. Leora shifted slightly, her small hands fidgeting in her lap. She had never left the palace walls, never experienced life outside its protective confines. The thought of leaving, even with a human warrior, made her chest tighten with fear. Yet there was a spark of something else, a curiosity, a hope she did not fully understand. Kale knelt before her, careful not to appear threatening. Leora, he said softly, I know you are scared. I would be too if I were in your place, but I promise you this, I will not let anything happen to you. And I will help you find a strength you may not even know exists. The girl's lips trembled and she looked down. Slowly she nodded, placing a tiny hand in Kale's. The contact was brief, but it carried a silent agreement. She would trust him, at least enough to try. The journey began aboard Kale's ship, a sleek vessel built for speed and survival. The moment they left the atmosphere of Zithera, Leora pressed her face against the glass, watching the planet shrink until it became a small glowing jewel. It's beautiful, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I never knew it looked like that from here. Kyle smiled. There's a lot in the universe you've never seen, and there's a lot you'll need to see if you want to survive. The first days were difficult. Leora struggled with the simplest tasks, walking in zero gravity, handling the ship's controls, even managing her own movements in confined spaces. Kale was patient, guiding her gently, correcting her posture, showing her how to focus her energy. He did not rush her, knowing that forcing her would only break her spirit. But Kale also knew that survival in the galaxy was unforgiving. The ship passed through meteor fields, and Leora had to learn to react quickly to sudden jolts and hazards. On more than one occasion, Kale had to catch her before she fell, and each time he reminded her gently, You must trust yourself as much as you trust me. Otherwise, you will never survive. Slowly, small changes began to show. Leora's movements became steadier. Her hands were no longer trembling when she reached for objects. Her eyes, once wide with fear, now held focus, tracking the path ahead. And though she still leaned on Kale for guidance, there was a new determination in her. One evening, as the ship glided silently through the void, Leora spoke quietly. "Kale, why did my father give me to you? Did he think I would die if I stayed?" Kale shook his head. "No, he knew you could live, but not as you were. He needed someone to help you discover the strength inside yourself. And that someone is me." Leora was silent for a long time, staring out into the endless blackness dotted with stars. Finally, she said, "I don't know if I can ever be strong like you." "You already are," Kyle said firmly. "You just haven't realized it yet. Strength is not just about muscle or speed. It's about courage, focus, and the will to keep going when everything tells you to stop. You have all of that inside you. I just need to help you see it." The next challenge came sooner than expected. Sensors on the ship detected a cluster of rogue ships approaching, their weapons powered and ready. Leora froze, gripping the railing of the observation deck. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is your first real test," he said calmly. "Watch, learn, and then act when I tell you." "Can you do that?" She nodded, though her hands shook. Kale maneuvered the ship carefully, evading the enemy fire. Leora watched every movement, trying to understand how he anticipated the attackers. When the opportunity came, Kale handed her a control panel, instructing her to activate the shields. Leora's fingers hesitated, then pressed the buttons exactly as he had shown her. The shields flared to life, protecting the ship just in time. "You did it," Kyle said, pride in his voice. "You saved us." Leora's eyes widened. I did?" "Yes," Kale said, smiling. "You did." For the first time, Leora felt something she had never known. Confidence. A small spark, but enough to light a fire within her. She was fragile, yes, but not powerless. And Kale, who had seen countless battles and faced untold dangers, knew this was the beginning of something extraordinary. That night, as Leora drifted to sleep in a small cabin aboard the ship, she thought about the galaxy outside, the vastness and the dangers it held. Fear still lingered, but now it was mixed with something else, a sense of possibility. She could be more than she had ever imagined. And she would have to be, for the journey ahead promised trials that would test every ounce of her courage. Kale watched her sleep from the doorway, his mind turning over the challenges to come. The galaxy was cruel, full of threats that could destroy the unprepared. But he also saw the potential in Leora, a potential so rare that it could shape not only her destiny, but the destiny of entire worlds. He knew it would not be easy, and there would be moments when she might falter. But he also knew this, with guidance, patience, and relentless encouragement, Leora could become more than anyone expected. The ship continued its course through the stars, carrying the fragile princess and her human protector into a future neither could fully see. But one thing was certain. The galaxy was about to witness the awakening of a warrior who had once seemed too delicate to survive. And Kale, as her guide, would be there every step of the way, ready to face the dangers that lay ahead. The ship glided through the endless void of space, silent except for the soft hum of its engines. Leora had been aboard for several days now, and the first spark of courage she had discovered was beginning to grow. She still stumbled and faltered, but Kale's constant guidance had begun to show results. Kale had decided it was time for her first real training session. They were approaching a small, rocky planet, barren and harsh, yet perfect for survival exercises. The planet's atmosphere was thin, the gravity slightly lower than Zithra's, making it a challenge for someone still learning control over her body. Leora stood at the edge of the landing bay, her small frame wrapped in a simple suit that protected her from the environment. She looked out at the jagged rocks and craggy terrain, her heart pounding. "You're nervous," Kale said, noticing her hesitation. I don't want to fail," Leora admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale knelt before her. "Listen, Leora, failing is part of learning. Every warrior, human or alien, fails many times before they succeed. What matters is that you get back up. You understand?" Leora nodded, her hands tightening into fists. She could feel the fear lingering, but she also felt something new. Determination. Kale's words had given her a reason to try, and that reason was stronger than her fear. The first exercise was simple in theory, walking across a narrow ledge suspended over a canyon. In reality, it was terrifying. One misstep could send her tumbling into the rocky depths below. Kale demonstrated first, moving with ease across the ledge. It's not about speed, he explained. It's about focus and balance. Trust your body. Trust yourself. Leora took a deep breath and stepped onto the ledge. Her legs shook immediately. Every instinct told her to run back, to hide, to avoid the risk. But she remembered Kale's words. Slowly, she put one foot in front of the other. She wobbled, lost balance, and nearly fell. But Kale's hand caught hers, steadying her. Try again, he said calmly. This time focus only on the next step. She closed her eyes briefly, felt the wind brush her face, and took another step. Then another. Step by step, she moved across the ledge. When she reached the other side, her chest heaved with relief and triumph. She had done it. Kale smiled, proud but careful not to overpraise. Good, he said. But this is only the beginning. The next challenge was endurance. Kale led her through a narrow canyon filled with sharp rocks and uneven ground. They had to climb, jump, and crawl through tight spaces. Leora's muscles ached quickly. She stumbled several times, scraping her knees and elbows, but Kyle never let her give up. Pain is temporary, Kale said, moving beside her. Strength lasts longer. Keep going. Leora pushed herself, feeling her body respond in ways it never had before. She discovered muscles she had never used, and her mind began to think faster, planning her movements before they were needed. By the time they reached the canyon's end, she was exhausted, but she had also grown stronger. Kyle looked at her with satisfaction. You're learning faster than I expected, he admitted. Your body is fragile, yes, but your mind is sharp. That will be your greatest weapon. As night fell over the planet, they set up camp in a small cave. Leora sat quietly, staring at the stars through the cave's opening. Kale prepared a simple meal using the ship's supplies. For the first time, Leora spoke freely. Kyle, do you really think I can become a warrior? She asked. I do, he said without hesitation.
You're already showing courage and determination.
A warrior isn't born strong. A warrior is born willing to face fear and push beyond it, and you are willing. The next day brought their first real test, survival against the planet's wildlife. The planet was home to creatures unlike any Kale had encountered. Some were small and fast, others large and dangerous, all of them predators in their own way. Kale explained that Leora would need to use her senses, her instincts, and her mind to survive. The first encounter came quickly. A pack of small but vicious creatures appeared, their sharp teeth glinting in the sun. Leora froze, unsure of what to do. Kale moved to protect her, but he also stepped back, giving her room to act. Use what I taught you, he urged. Focus. Predict their moves. Leora took a deep breath, recalling the balance exercises, the movements through the canyon, and the trust she had begun to place in her own body. She dodged one creature, leapt over another, and finally, using a small staff Kale had given her, managed to fend them off. The pack retreated, and Leora stood panting but victorious. Kyle's eyes lit with pride. You see? You can survive. You can fight. You just need to trust yourself. Over the following days, Kale pushed her further. They climbed rocky cliffs, navigated treacherous terrain, and faced more of the planet's wildlife. Each challenge was designed not only to build her strength, but to teach her strategy, observation, and quick thinking. Leora began to understand that being a warrior was not just about physical power. It was about awareness, courage, and the ability to make split-second decisions. One evening, while resting near a small stream, Leora finally allowed herself to reflect on how far she had come. She remembered the fragile girl she had been when Kale first arrived. She had feared falling, feared failing, feared that the universe was too big and cruel for her, and now she had faced danger, survived, and even succeeded where she had thought impossible. A small smile crossed her face. For the first time, she felt a quiet confidence. Kale watched her from across the stream, noticing the subtle changes in her posture, her expression, and her aura. You're beginning to understand, he said softly. Strength is not just about the body. It's about knowing yourself, knowing your limits, and learning how to surpass them. The next trial came without warning. A sudden storm swept across the rocky plains, with fierce winds and electrical storms that made the terrain even more dangerous. Leora struggled to keep her footing as rocks shifted beneath her, and Kale had to call on all his experience to guide her through the chaos. Stay close to me, he shouted over the roar of the wind. Focus on my voice, not the storm. Leora clung to him, moving carefully, feeling her body respond instinctively to the shifting ground. When the storm passed, she was soaked, bruised, and exhausted, but she had survived. And more importantly, she had learned to trust herself in situations where fear threatened to overwhelm her. Kyle smiled faintly, helping her to her feet. Every trial, every challenge, it's making you stronger. You're no longer the fragile girl I first met. You're becoming a warrior, Leora. And soon, you'll need to test yourself even more. As they prepared to leave the planet, Leora looked back at the jagged cliffs, the dangerous canyons, and the creatures they had faced. She felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. The universe was still vast, still dangerous, but now she felt she could face it. Kale entered the ship first, then held out a hand to help her aboard. She took it without hesitation, her fingers gripping his firmly. The ship lifted off, gliding smoothly into the stars. "Where to next?" she asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Kale smiled. "Wherever the universe tests us next. And believe me, it will." For the first time, Leora felt ready, not just to survive, but to grow, to learn, and to discover the strength that had been hidden within her all along. She was no longer fragile. She was a warrior in the making, and Kale would be there to guide her through every step of the journey that lay ahead. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of challenges, mysteries, and adventures. And Leora, once a delicate princess, was beginning to understand that the galaxy held no limits for those brave enough to rise and face it. The ship cut silently through the black expanse of space, its silver hull gleaming under the distant stars. Leora had changed so much since Kale first met her. She was stronger, faster, and more aware of the universe around her. But Kale knew that physical endurance and survival skills were only part of what a warrior needed. The next step was combat training. They arrived at a planet called Dravon, known for its rugged terrain and extreme weather. Mountains jutted sharply from the ground, and the air was thick with metallic particles that made every breath a challenge. Kyle landed near a flat plateau, a perfect place for training. Leora stepped off the ship, feeling the gravity pull on her stronger muscles. She was no longer trembling at each movement. She was ready to begin a new stage. Kyle spread out a set of training weapons, swords, staffs, and small shields. All combat is not just about strength, he said. It's about strategy, anticipation, and control. You must learn to move before your enemy moves. You must think before you act. And most of all, you must trust yourself. Leora picked up a staff, its weight unfamiliar but manageable. Kale demonstrated first, moving with precision and speed, blocking invisible attacks and striking with exactness. "Watch my movements, then mirror them. Feel the rhythm, understand the flow," he instructed. At first, Leora struggled. Her swings were awkward, her balance uneven. She stumbled several times, nearly falling on the rocky ground. Kale remained patient, correcting her stance, guiding her arms, and encouraging her. "Every mistake teaches you," he reminded her. "Do not fear them. Use them to learn." Hours passed, and Leora began to understand. She could feel her body moving in a way that seemed natural. Her arms and legs responded to her mind, striking and blocking almost instinctively. Kale introduced faster sequences, forcing her to react quicker. Leora's reflexes, honed from previous survival training, began to shine. She was faster than Kale expected, adapting his techniques into her own unique style. By the third day, Kale decided it was time for her first real combat simulation. Drones, designed to mimic aggressive opponents, rose from hidden pits in the plateau. They moved quickly, attacking from different directions, forcing Leora to defend herself, dodge, and counterattack. Her heart pounded as the first drone lunged. Leora blocked it with her staff, spun around, and struck another. The sequence was chaotic, but she remembered Kale's lessons: anticipate, react, and never lose focus. She moved fluidly, striking drones and evading attacks, her small frame a blur of determination. Kale watched silently, impressed. Leora was no longer the hesitant, fragile girl he had met. She was beginning to become the warrior he had envisioned. When the simulation ended, Leora was covered in sweat, breathing heavily, but her eyes shone with triumph. "You did well," Kale said. "Better than I expected. But remember, the real world does not wait. It is faster, smarter, and more dangerous than any simulation. The following days were grueling. Kyle introduced advanced techniques, hand-to-hand combat, stealth movements, and tactical thinking. Leora adapted quickly, combining her alien agility with human strategies. Her mind became sharper, able to anticipate multiple outcomes at once. Even Kale, who had faced countless battles across galaxies, marveled at her progress. One night, after an intense day of training, Leora sat alone on a cliff overlooking the planet's glowing horizon. Kale joined her, silently observing the stars. "You've grown so much," he said softly. "I've seen many warriors, but you have something special. It's not just skill, it's courage and intelligence combined." Leora turned to him, a faint smile on her lips. "Do you really think I can face real enemies one day?" Kyle nodded. "I know you can, but the galaxy will test you, and soon you will meet those who will challenge everything you've learned." The test came sooner than either of them expected. Scanners on the ship detected a hostile fleet approaching a nearby colony. Pirates, armed and ruthless, were preparing to attack. Leora's eyes widened as Kyle explained the situation. "This is your first real battle," he said. "You will fight, you will protect, and you will learn what it truly means to be a warrior." Leora's heart raced, but she did not hesitate. She had trained for this moment, and she was ready to apply everything she had learned. They landed on the planet near the colony, where civilians were already hiding from the approaching threat. Kale handed Leora a small energy shield and a short blade. "Protect them," he instructed. "Think, move, and act. Trust yourself." The battle began swiftly. The pirates' ships fired beams that cracked the ground and sent dust into the air. Leora ducked and rolled, using the terrain for cover. She blocked attacks with her shield, striking back when the opportunity arose. Her movements were precise, her instincts sharp. Every maneuver she had practiced was now instinctive, flowing naturally with her body. At one point, a pirate lunged at a group of civilians. Leora acted without thinking, throwing herself in front of them, deflecting the attack and pushing the attackers back. Her small frame seemed fragile, but the strength she had gained shone clearly. Kale, observing, realized she was faster, smarter, and more daring than many seasoned warriors he had trained. The battle raged on, but Leora did not falter. She moved through chaos with focus, protecting the innocent and striking at the attackers with precision. Her confidence grew with every successful action. The villagers, who had feared defeat, now saw hope in her determination. When the battle ended, the pirate fleet retreated, unable to overcome the unexpected resistance. Leora stood among the villagers, her chest heaving, sweat and dirt covering her small form. For the first time, she saw herself not as a fragile princess, but as a powerful warrior. Kale approached her, pride evident in his expression. "You did it," he said simply. "You protected them. You acted when it mattered. That is the heart of a warrior." Leora looked down at her hands, trembling slightly from adrenaline. I actually did it." "Yes," Kyle said. "And you will do it again, many times. The galaxy is vast, and there will always be threats. But now, you know you can face them." That night, as they returned to the ship, Leora reflected on her journey. She remembered the fragile girl who had trembled at the thought of leaving the palace. That girl had changed. The universe was still vast and dangerous, but now she had confidence. She had skill, strategy, and courage. She was becoming the warrior Kale had always believed she could be. Kale watched her quietly, noting the determination in her eyes. The galaxy had tested her, and she had survived. But he knew this was only the beginning. Greater challenges awaited, and Leora would need to be ready. Yet he also knew that she had the potential to surpass every expectation, to become a force of hope and strength, not only for herself, but for countless others across the stars. As the ship continued through space, heading toward the next adventure, Leora felt a sense of purpose. She was no longer fragile. She was a warrior in the making, learning not just to survive, but to protect, to lead, and to fight for what mattered. And Kale, her guide and mentor, would be there for every step, every challenge, and every triumph. The stars stretched endlessly before them, each one a new opportunity, a new trial, and a new chance for Leora to grow. She had faced danger, mastered her body, and tested her mind. Now she was ready for the battles that would define her true strength. And in the quiet of the ship as she trained for the future, a sense of anticipation stirred within her, a promise that the universe had much more in store, and she would meet it head-on. The journey back to Zythera was quiet, filled with reflection and anticipation. Leora sat near the viewport of the ship, watching the distant stars blur past as they traveled at faster-than-light speed. The galaxy had tested her, pushed her to her limits, and she had survived. She had grown stronger, sharper, braver, and more confident. The fragile girl who had trembled at the thought of leaving the palace was gone. In her place was a warrior. Kyle observed her quietly, noting the subtle changes in her posture, the determination in her eyes, and the aura of confidence she now radiated. He had guided her through survival exercises, combat training, and her first real battle. Now, she was ready to face the ultimate challenge, returning to her home planet and proving herself not just to her father, but to all who doubted her. As Zythera grew larger on the viewfinder, Leora felt a mix of emotions. Excitement, pride, and a little fear stirred within her. The palace, the people, and her father's gaze awaited her. She wondered if they would see her as she truly was now, a warrior capable of defending her people. The landing was smooth, and the ship descended gracefully onto the crystalline plains near the palace. Word had spread across the city of the return of the alien king's daughter, and curious citizens gathered to catch a glimpse of her. Leora stepped off the ship, her movements confident, her eyes scanning the crowd. She noticed the whispers, the curious glances, and the doubts in the eyes of some elders who had known her only as the fragile princess. Kale walked beside her, keeping a careful watch on the surroundings. "Remember," he said softly, "courage is contagious. Show them what you have become, not with words, but with action." Leora nodded. She walked through the crowd with calm assurance, holding her head high. People stepped aside, some in awe, some in disbelief. Whispers spread quickly. She has returned. Stronger. Inside the palace, the alien king awaited. His golden eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of his daughter. When Leora finally entered the throne room, he rose from his seat, his expression unreadable. She approached him with measured steps, bowing respectfully. "Father," she said, her voice steady, "I have returned." The king studied her carefully. Her frame was no longer fragile. Her posture was upright, her gaze firm, and her presence commanding. He saw the determination in her eyes, the subtle strength that spoke louder than any words. "You have changed," he said finally, his voice calm, but with an edge of pride. "Tell me, what have you learned?" Leora took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I have learned to trust myself, Father. I have learned to face fear and danger, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and to fight when necessary. I am no longer the fragile princess who needed constant protection. I am a warrior, capable of defending our people and our world." The king nodded slowly, his expression softening. "Then you have fulfilled the purpose I entrusted to Kale, and perhaps you have surpassed even what I imagined." Before the reunion could deepen, alarms sounded throughout the city. A fleet of invaders had been detected approaching Zythera. They were armed, numerous, and intent on conquest. The palace guards prepared for defense, but the citizens grew anxious. Leora's heart raced as she realized this was her ultimate test. The galaxy had prepared her for this moment, and she could no longer rely on Kyle alone. Kale placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You know what to do," he said. "Lead them, and I will be at your side." Leora nodded. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, moving to the front of the palace courtyard where the army and citizens had gathered. She raised her hand, commanding attention. "We face danger, but we will not falter. Stand together. Protect your homes. Trust in yourselves and in each other." Her words carried power, not just in tone but in the unwavering confidence behind them. The citizens and soldiers felt a surge of courage. They had seen her grow, seen her fight alongside Kale, and now they believed in her. The army formed ranks inspired by the warrior princess who had once been fragile. The invaders arrived, their ships dark and menacing against the violet sky. Energy blasts cracked the ground, and chaos threatened to engulf the city. But Leora moved with precision, directing defenses, guiding soldiers to strategic positions, and personally engaging in combat where she was needed most. Her movements were fluid, calculated, and lethal when necessary, yet always protective. Kyle fought beside her, deflecting attacks and providing support. But it was Leora who became the center of the defense. She anticipated enemy strategies, countered with calculated moves, and inspired those around her. Citizens and soldiers who had once doubted her now saw her as the embodiment of courage and strength. At one critical moment, a large enemy ship targeted the palace directly. Leora assessed the situation and made a split-second decision. She led a small group to intercept, using the terrain and her knowledge of enemy tactics. With precise coordination and bold maneuvers, they disabled the ship's weapons before it could strike. The crowd erupted in cheers as the immediate threat was neutralized. When the battle finally ended, the invaders were forced to retreat. Zythera was safe, and its people had witnessed the rise of a new hero. Leora stood amidst the aftermath, battered but unbroken. She looked around at the grateful faces, the soldiers who saluted her, and her father, whose expression now radiated pride and relief. The alien king approached her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have done what I could not have imagined," he said. "You have not only survived the galaxy's trials, but you have proven yourself a warrior worthy of leading our people. I am proud, Leora, more than proud. I am humbled by what you have become." Leora bowed her head respectfully. "Thank you, Father. I could not have done this without Kale, and I could not have grown without the challenges I faced. The galaxy tested me, and I have learned to meet those challenges not with fear, but with courage." Kyle stepped forward, his usual calm demeanor showing a rare smile. "You've surpassed even my expectations," he said. "The universe is vast, and there will be more battles, more challenges. But I have no doubt you will face them with the same courage you've shown here today." Leora felt a surge of determination. She had grown from a fragile girl into a warrior who could protect her people, inspire hope, and face any challenge. The journey had been long, filled with fear, pain, and struggle, but every trial had shaped her into the person she had become. As the city celebrated their victory, Leora took a moment to reflect. The galaxy was still full of dangers, still full of mysteries and challenges, but she now had the skills, courage, and mind to face them. She was no longer defined by her fragility. She was a warrior, a protector, and a leader. The night sky shimmered with distant stars, a reminder that her journey was only beginning. But Leora stood tall, ready to face whatever came next. The fragile princess was gone, replaced by a powerful warrior whose courage and determination would inspire generations to come. Kale looked at her, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The galaxy had tested them both, and they had emerged stronger. Leora was ready to lead, ready to fight, and ready to show the universe what it meant to rise above fear. And as the twin suns rose over Zythera the next morning, casting golden light over the crystalline city, Leora stepped forward, not just as the alien king's daughter, but as a warrior whose strength, courage, and heart could not be matched.